Imagine waking up in the richest city on earth only to find all your money is suddenly worthless. How does a superpower collapse? Not to enemies, not to rebellion, but to math. This is the story of Rome's greatest lie, the day its empire of gold turned to dust.
Rome, the beating heart of civilization. An empire drowning in gold, luxury, and conquest. But beneath the marble and the markets, the world's richest empire was rotting from within. The 2nd century after Christ, the Pax Romana, the age of peace and prosperity, or so the history books say. But behind the illusion of stability, Rome's economy was already cracking, poisoned by greed, corruption, and imperial vanity. It began long before the final collapse, with emperors who spent gold like water, building palaces, funding games, and burning fortunes in pursuit of eternal glory. Nero, for all his infamy, was the first to break the imperial bank.
He just kept on spending, without control. Then one morning, the empire that ruled the world discovered it could no longer afford itself.
When Nero's debts outgrew his empire's wealth, he did what many rulers would do for centuries to come. He cheated the system. He reduced the purity of Rome's coins, adding cheaper metals to make more money, without actually having any. It was the birth of a dangerous illusion, inflation. And like a silent fire, it would consume Rome from the inside out. What began as a trick of metal became a crisis of trust. Rome's economy wasn't collapsing from the outside, it was rotting from its own hands. The rhythmic clang of hammers echoes. Workers pour molten silver, then scrape the edges of freshly minted coins, revealing the dull bronze beneath.
Nero had shown them how to cheat the empire, and the emperors that follow, well, they perfected the art.
When gold ran out, they turned to silver. When silver ran out, they turned to lies. Vespasian, Trajan, Hadrian. For decades, Rome's rulers managed to keep the illusion alive. The denarius, the silver coin that built the empire, remained the heartbeat of trade, soldier pay, and public trust. But behind the gleaming facade, its value was quietly dying. Emperor Caracalla at his desk, surrounded by scrolls and chests of coins. He looks tired, calculating the economic future of his empire. By the time of Emperor Caracalla, the empire's hunger was insatiable. More armies, more walls, more luxury, but his treasury was empty. His solution? A new coin, the Antoninianus, worth twice a denarius, but made with barely half the silver. In Caracalla's hand lifts a gleaming new coin. It looks rich, but under the light, its color is pale, almost gray. It was currency alchemy valued by decree, not by metal. Rome's economy began to drift from silver to shadow, merchants refusing payment, soldiers inspecting coins suspiciously, a black market forming for pure silver pieces. Across the provinces, trust broke. Traders began melting old coins, hoarding real silver. Armies demanded more pay to make up for what the coin had lost. Inflation, the ghost Nero unleashed, now haunted every corner of the empire. A soldier complains to his superior,
"You promised me 10 denarii. This isn't even worth one."
A new emperor emerges, Emperor Elagabalus, young, lavish, surrounded by gold-threaded silks and courtiers tossing coins into fountains.
Some emperors spent what little silver remained not on armies or grains, but on parties, gods, and self-worship. But Elagabalus, the emperor? I mean, this guy takes it to another level. He even wears makeup.
Elagabalus was said to have drowned his guests in perfume and filled fountains with wine, while the treasury collapsed. Rome's coin, once the symbol of its strength, had become its greatest weakness. The silver was fading, and with it, so was the empire's faith. What began as an empire of gold is now living on borrowed silver. By the 3rd century, the Roman Empire had become a kingdom of promises it could no longer afford to keep. Borders of the empire pulsing, shrinking, fracturing. Civil wars erupt across Gaul, the East, and the Danube. The silver was gone, the trust was gone, all that remained was power. And power now could be bought. When Emperor Pertinax was assassinated, his throne was sold to the highest bidder, literally. The Praetorian Guard auctioned off the Roman Empire to a senator named Didius Julianus, who promised the biggest payout. Emperor Didius Julianus in the Roman Senate, sweating as soldiers stand by. Rome, the empire that once conquered the world, had become an empire for sale. Merchants in Antioch refusing Roman currency, demanding payment in grain, gold, or goods. Soldiers loot a town to feed themselves. As the money died, so did discipline. Armies turned against emperors. Provinces declared independence. Gaul, Syria, Egypt, each breaking away, forming their own empires with their own currencies. Emperor Gallienus, in his war tent, frustrated.
I command the shadow of Rome, not Rome itself.
For decades, emperors rise and fall. But Rome? Still drowning, still in survival mode. Will someone step up and save the empire?
Farmers abandoning fields, coins worthless in their hands. Inflation had become monstrous. A loaf of bread cost what a soldier once earned in a year. The denarius, once silver, was now bronze washed in lies. But amid the ruin, one man tried to rebuild the impossible. Emperor Aurelian, the restorer of the world. He crushed rebellions, reunited the empire, and tried to reform the currency, striking coins of true silver once more. Mint workers melting old coins, refining metal, stamping new coins with Aurelian's image. For a moment, hope returned. Aurelian promised honesty, a currency that could be trusted again. But honesty could not save him. He was murdered by his own men for debts Rome could never repay.
Personally, I think Emperor Aurelian could have saved Rome. If only they gave him more time. I mean, he started out great, right? And then he gets killed? For what? Now, Rome is definitely doomed.
A pile of coins scattered on the ground, old emperors' faces, corroded and stacked upon each other, discarded. In the end, Rome's greatest empire wasn't built on gold or silver, but on belief. And when belief died, so did Rome. Rome did not fall in a single night. It decayed in plain sight, its people too proud, its rulers too desperate, its wealth too fragile to sustain the illusion. Gold turned to bronze, trust turned to fear. The empire that had once ruled 1,000 cities began to rot from within its own palaces. Rome's crisis wasn't just financial, it was moral. It was a sickness of excess. Every emperor who minted more coins believed he was buying time. But time, like silver, cannot be forged. By the time the barbarians came, Rome had already conquered itself with greed, with corruption, with lies painted in gold.
Yet the story doesn't end in the ashes of Rome. Because empires never truly die, they just change their form.
Every generation believes it has learned from history. Every empire tells itself, this time, we are different. But the same cycle repeats. The same hunger for power, the same illusion of endless wealth. Rome wasn't destroyed by enemies at its gates. It was undone by promises it couldn't afford to keep. And perhaps that's how every empire ends. Not with fire, but with debt.
And that's how Rome collapsed. Lesson learned? Well, we learned that greed and corruption are more powerful than conquest or armies, and sadly, they're pretty much around today. Rome didn't fall because of invasion. It fell because it never believed it could. Its arrogance blinds itself to its own cracks. And that may be the oldest lesson we are still doomed to repeat.